We think there's going to be a lot of litigation because we have so much evidence, so much proof, and it's going to end up perhaps at the highest court in the land. We'll see. But we think there'll be a lot of litigation because we can't have an election stolen like this.
There you've got the president last night talking about how he's moving things to the courts, bringing the latest legal action in the state of Nevada. So how does this process work and what happens next? Joining us right now is law professor and Fox News contributor Jonathan Turley. Joining us from, as you can see, he's actually in the president's front lawn, it looks like right now, in front of the White House. Jonathan, good morning to you.
That's right. Good morning.
Good morning. Okay, so the president last night demanded that they stop counting the ballots because he said there's fraud. He's talking about lawsuits. He says there's so much evidence, as we just heard, in that. I think at this point we need to see the evidence, right?
Right. I mean, when a president says there's going to be a lot of litigation, all the legal analysts feel warm and tingly, and an angel gets its wings because litigation is a blood sport when it comes to elections. I think I'm the only attorney currently not under retainer by one of the two campaigns, which is why I'm speaking to you today.
Right.
But this can get very intense because real challenges require very close scrutiny of votes. We're not seeing that. And what I really want to see is this Nevada lawsuit, which does raise a systemic allegation of ineligible voters, people who moved out of the state or people who are actually deceased. We haven't seen that evidence, and until we do, they're hunting elephants with derringers. We need something with a little more of a high caliber if you're going to take down an election result or determination. So we're waiting for that evidence to come forward. Is it possible? Of course it is. I'm not willing to rule it out. I find it odd that everyone is making judgments without actually seeing these filings. If they have evidence of thousands of people voting improperly, that may be a systemic problem, not just in Nevada, but other states.
Sure.
I mean, we're doing something that we haven't done before. We're talking about tens of millions of people voting in a system relying on records that are really sketchy in terms of addresses and identifications.
Sure. And one of the things that's frustrating to Republicans is the fact that it seems like at the 11th hour they threw out all the rules. Well, you know what? The signature doesn't have to match, and there doesn't have to be a postmark, and we're going to take it a couple of days after. So that's going forward. But when it comes to the state of Pennsylvania, the Trump team did sue and said there's no transparency because we're not allowed to be close to the counting process. So they moved them within 6 feet. Mr. Turley, but then, according to Pam Bondi, who is one of the observers, they put the counting machines way in the back where you'd need high-powered spectaculars to see it.
Yeah, I'm mystified as to why Pennsylvania officials are fighting this particular issue. It's not the type of thing that will change the result of an election. Many courts, in fact, will declare this moot. That's the problem, and that is they can get away with this by finishing the count, and then the court just shrugs and says, well, yeah, it was a violation, but it's moot. And that gets to the real concern, I think, from the Trump campaign. We saw this in 2000, and that is it's not whether you win ultimately, it's whether you are viewed the winner at the time of certification.
Right.
In Florida, a lot of Democrats said months later they thought that actually Al Gore won that election, but it came way too late. So we have to get this process started or we will run out of runway. We have a very short period to look at these ballots, and it really hasn't started.
Right. Also, overnight, the president tweeted out something that has been flagged, naturally, by Twitter. He said that because of the allegations of illegal voting, the U.S. Supreme Court should decide the election. At what point does the Supreme Court get involved, if at all?
Well, of course, the Supreme Court was involved. It's just that it didn't do anything. It deadlocked 4-4 on the Pennsylvania question, that is, of these late processed ballots. That was part of a change ordered by the court. It seemed to violate the rules by the legislature. Chief Justice Roberts effectively kicked that can down the road. Well, it's back. I mean, some of these justices still want to have answers on whether the law was changed literally right before the election. But once again, Steve, we don't know how many ballots are actually in play on that question. But it could very well end up back in Pennsylvania. There's a lot of work that still has to be done, and we have to see if any of these allegations have support. If they do, yeah, a couple of these could be a game changer.
All right, let's see if that comes today. Game changer. We've had about 8 of them this week so far. Jonathan Turley, we thank you very much for joining us live from D.C.
Thanks, Steve.
All right. Coming up on 6:30 here.